Okay, we're live. Hello, everybody. Hi, everybody. This is NGN New Gaming News. Our guest today is Dan Coonan from the ECAC, the East Coast Athletic Conference, college conferences. And I've talked to Jen before, prior to this, Dan, about how I believe college esports is going to be bigger than the pro circuits in esports in the next coming year or so. You know, after we crawl out of this pandemic problem, I believe there's going to be a serious, huge. There's George.
Yeah, my cam. I'm just going to turn it off because
it's mysterious, George. We like it.
So we're gonna. So we know that college esports is going to have an enormous boom, and I've mentioned this to Jen on our prior podcasts and our streams. And, you know, it's great to have you on as a guest. And we're going to get to college discussion and esports as we walk through these, our top news for today. And George is, I don't know if you met George during the virtual casino esport conference, but he runs a program called Esports Academics, which teaches colleges and high schools about how to develop their esports programs.
Amazing.
So the first article we're going to get to today is the ESEA identified 7 cases of misconduct in MDL. So I'm going to share my screen here. I'll show you where this is coming from.
So pretty much the Mountain Dew League, there was a few players and teams that were betting on themselves. And obviously you're not allowed to do that. So they were issued a 12-month ban. And that is coming. That news is coming after a few coaches utilizing a glitch in like the spectator cam above it to cheat as well. So there's been a lot of cheating in the betting world of CS:GO.
Right. So this is an issue. Well, particularly this has been going on, I think, since the pandemic. If I'm not, if I'm correct, is that right, Jen?
I would say so. Yeah.
I mean, with the pandemic and everything, I think it's more or less been an issue because they can't have in person
there watching,
and no one physically there watching. And we covered this before about how there is a fan-based viewership of the Call of Duty League's events, and there's the map that you could see. The fans only can see if it was an actual in-person LAN event in place where people were actually being watched. The coaches and teams could not see what the fans see on that map. But what was happening was the coaches were getting caught in cheating, and so were some of the players because they were able to see what fans would normally see because they were not being watched. So it's been a big problem with the integrity of the Call of Duty League, and it's something I think we'll touch on. Because, you know, well, as I said, prior to, I don't know if we were live or not, but prior to this, I said that, you know, Dan, the colleges, I can even bring it in now, but the colleges are going to have a real issue to deal with when it comes to making sure that each match in esports is being played through integrity purposes. Let me ask you this question. What do you think could be the college's move to make sure that, I mean, what I said to Jen was in prior podcasts was that, you know, they would lose their scholarship, or they could lose a positioning on the team, or there would be some kind of penalty. I mean, would a college deal with a esports college player like they would a regular athlete?
Yeah, and you would also have the conference come in. So if this happened for us, as the commissioner of the ECAC, I have the authority to take action as well, and be with our bylaws and our charter. And I think you would see schools themselves, especially the ones that are really connected above and through the president. A lot of our schools, this is something the presidents wanted to do, esports, and for those that have that kind of connectivity throughout the university, you would see this. I think you'd see the schools stepping in. Especially now, I think it'll be interesting to see in a couple of years. And you talk about the explosion of college and what you think might happen just for us. My God, we've gone to 75 schools in 3 years. It's crazy, and we may exceed 100 and go beyond that. And the bigger it gets, and the more competitive it gets, we're going to see more attempts to cheat, and the more that becomes at stake. When the stakes are really high, people do tend to cut corners, and we're going to see a lot more of that than we see now. But it's coming, to start with, we have few barriers to entry, and we don't have a ton of rules. The NCAA has a 500-page manual. Ours is not anywhere near like that, but it might be eventually if. So
you're saying each conference will be like the ECAC, like ECAC, like the Esports Integrity Coalition that is run by Ian Smith in London, where it's this is why I say that college esports is going to be bigger than professional esports, because if you break it down to each commission, which you have, like the ECAC, NCAA, and all the different divisions, it's much more. There's already a structure there that allows for for integrity of the play of each individual esport match. And would these players be subject then to discipline just like a regular athlete would be?
Yes, they would. And it's not under the NCAA, by the way. The NCAA has passed on it, but so we are taking the function of the NCAA, really, the ECAC, for our 75 schools. And so yes, but we function as that. And if the schools didn't punish and it was something that was in violation of our bylaws, we would absolutely step in.
So maybe it should be called the ECEC.
Well,
the East Coast Esports Coalition. I mean,
we're not just East Coast anymore. We're coast to coast. We're California schools.
So EC. So what are some of the schools that are on the East Coast right now?
Sacramento State from the West Coast. We now have Sacramento State. So it's been terrific. But Syracuse just won we had a HV GamerCon. We had our national championship, really, our tournament. Syracuse won the Rocket League for that. We have some of those. We have some of the schools from the Big East. They play Big East League of Legends, but they come with, like Providence. They come with us, and they play. And we're running 10 different games. And so you can be a part of something else. You can be part of the formal Riot structure for League of Legends and play all the other games with us. Okay. That's the real allure of us, and you can, if you're with us, you can enter as many teams per game as you want. You can enter as many games as we have, and we do all our games we do in the fall, and we do them again in the spring, and then we have a couple of in-person tournaments as well. And we're on ESTV now, and we've averaged 65,000 views a week. We have we have 300 teams, and we have so many games each week.
Wow!
And so we're thrilled. The first 2 weeks we averaged 65,000 views. So we're clicking right now.
So let me ask you. So if somebody wanted to go watch an esports match, it's being streamed on Twitch, correct?
On Twitch as well, yes.
Right. So how would they look? Would they just look for ECAC Division Esports, or?
Yeah, ECAC Esports, yes. But on ESTV, there's so many ways. Roku, there's so many ways to get ESTV linear broadcast as well. And so, but you could do either, absolutely. And we're really excited about that. And our HV GamerCon, this in person, well, it used to be in person. We used to get a $150,000 grant from the state of New York to run this in-person championship up in Albany. We've done it virtually now. We just did it virtually 2 weeks ago, and we had a ton of streams for that as well as what we're doing for our leagues. So I think so far we've had well over 200,000 unique views on our linear channel, ESTV.
Well, in the next article, we're going to talk about something a little bit more challenging. But what I want to ask you is that for those folks out there that don't understand, like, the structure of the college levels, so is ECAC is that a division like the Big East or the Big Ten?
Well, so we're more like the NCAA than we are like the Big East or the Big Ten.
So it's an umbrella organization,
and anyone can join.
Okay.
And whereas the Big East is not interested really in beyond their, whatever they have now. They have 12 or 16 schools, I think. They're not really looking to expand that. We're going to be over 100. We're probably going to go to 150, 175. And so we're more of an umbrella organization. We run all the games, any competitive level we'll take and figure it out for you. And so we're not exactly like the Big East. And like I said, we have some of the schools in the Big East are with us for the other games that the Big East itself is not offering.
Right.
So we're running national championships.
So like if I would think of it as a hierarchy, the ECAC is so the Big East would be down here and the ECAC is over here, almost like an umbrella of some of the other, some of the other schools that are in the Big East, that are in the Atlantic 10, that are in whatever they're in. There are some groups of those teams that are from those schools that also can fall under the ECAC umbrella.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and the beauty of it is with so many games, and we're running 10 games. Who knows? In a year or two, that could be 20 games. We want to continue to expand. So schools could get involved in something else, or do, like I said, do the League of Legends with Riot or any other game year specific event with the game if the game is going to run it. But come to us for all the rest. So it's been a pretty cool structure for us.
And you're doing Rocket League and what else?
We have FIFA, Overwatch, Hearthstone, Rocket League, Fortnite, Super Smash, Valorant, Madden.
Wow, that's a heavy list. It's a lot of games. So this is interesting. I think we lost George again, unfortunately. But I'm gonna bring us to our next article. I mean, and this is interesting because as the esports world grows in the college ranks. Oh, George is there. Let's see if we can get him in there. Hey, George. His technical difficulties were worked out. Were worked out by our wonderful UK New Gaming News crew that's actually in George's closet in the back there. Anyway, so no, George, we were just talking about, we're going to get to our article, which I just put up, which is the Luxbox CEO mentioned. He just talked, Quentin Martin. He just talked and mentioned in this article in Gambling Insider. And we were just discussing, the structure for.
I was here for that, and whilst he was talking, I was trying to sort out all of the technical stuff that was going on my end. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about this article called "Esports Betting Will Overtake Traditional Sports Betting in My Lifetime." Now, with ECAC growing at in enormous rates, and this is something I think, and college players are not getting paid, obviously, for this kind of thing.
But now they can get sponsorships, right?
Yeah.
But how serious are these colleges under the ECAC going to be watched, and these kids going to be watched while they're playing esports, that they're not throwing matches because they're being bet on? I mean, college basketball is being bet on. I mean, when are we going to see that anyway? When we see esports betting happening in the college ranks? Yeah,
so we will see it. Unquestionably, it's coming, and but you already have it with the NCAA anyway. Yeah, as you mentioned, not for every sport, and it's really you have college basketball. You can bet on women's basketball too, but it's and football, of course, and so but at some point, and probably some point soon, you'll have betting on esports, and it'll have to be policed like it is at the NCAA. And I was, I worked. I still work in traditional sports, college sports, and so I've been connected with the NCAA. When I worked for the Pac-12, I did a lot of the gambling education for the schools, and it's a serious thing, And there have been some pretty significant scandals in the history of the NCAA with college basketball, especially, and that potentially could be an issue with esports, of course, and. Right now, for the NCAA and traditional sports, you have a huge infrastructure on the campuses and with the NCAA and a big policing mechanism. You don't really have that in esports, and
Right.
and there's good parts of that. You don't have that bureaucracy of the NCAA, and right now when we entered this world, we said we're not going to have amateurism notions like the NCAA does. You on the weekend, if you want to make a few $1,000s playing esports outside of the ECAC, go ahead. That's not going to jeopardize your eligibility with us. If you want to be sponsored, right now, there's no limits on that. You can do that if you want. So we don't have some of those rules, but absolutely the gambling will have to be heavy-handed on any issues that arise with respect to gambling, and you'll have to build up an infrastructure on the campuses and with the conferences to do that.
Yeah. So, and George, thanks for working out your tech problems. And George Cork, everybody, is coming from us all the way from the UK, United Kingdom. Now, Dan, if you're not aware, George runs a program called Esports Academics. George, how would you handle so we're talking to Dan, and Dan's talking about how players, have to be educated on the issues of gambling. How would you educate college kids to make sure, especially in esports, how would you go about talking to those students that are also active in the esports levels in colleges, and how would you go about talking to them or educating them on the dangers of being bribed by some guy who's going to give them a lot of money if they throw a match?
I think it's very key. Like, whenever anyone's really, let's say, taking that into consideration, you got to look at really where do you want to take your career? That's a start. Because if these are high prospects, they could end up going to actually play in the real world for multi-million dollars and many millions of dollars. It's also about setting the foundation early. So in terms of, I think Dan briefly said about being involved in the athletics and really like teaching the students about the gambling and everything. That needs to be done in esports as well. It's something which isn't done, really, I would say. And it's something which I feel like it needs to be implemented at some point. And really setting those foundations early, in my opinion, is the key answer. Right. Because setting those foundations early, you start to put not the idea, but the concept and the understanding of it into an individual, whether they're competing, whether they're a student, and it just helps the message get out there more.
Mm-hmm. I see. So that's basically, so it's not like you basically put the fear of God into them.
Personally, I don't feel like sometimes the fear of God does not work for some people.
Right.
Some people,
the fear of the mafia could work.
Yeah, that's true.
That's how. and I'm not even kidding. That's how the NCAA does it, and they bring, because as I mentioned, there've been so many instances with college basketball, especially of student athletes getting in trouble with the mob, so they bring some of those folks in to talk to current student athletes and let them know exactly, there could be prison time there, but there could be physical harm or the threat of physical harm to you or your family if you get indebted to these folks. And that can be very effective. And of course, with gambling on esports will come organized crime. And so it's not an exaggeration to suggest that that's also a way that we could educate with respect to college esports.
Well, if there's any college esport kids that are playing out there, young college students that are playing esports and on the collegiate level, this brings me to the next thing we're talking about is Simplicity Esports to acquire gaming centers in California and Washington. This is one of the things we're covering for Simplicity Esports, and any college student that's looking to go into the pros. I think, Jen, you had some, you wanted to touch on this, or is this from last week?
A lot of video for the Red Bull event, but I can talk about the Simplicity. Pretty much, they're just buying up property cheap right now.
Right.
And
Because
that's what they're doing. And I think it's a good idea for them because a lot of LAN centers are kind of like dying right now. There is not as much physical attendance, even though I don't know if it was in this or another one that we were talking, or another article we were talking about, but it was them. It was one of their LAN centers in Texas.
right.
Went up this month
Right.
because everything was opened back up after COVID.
Right.
Membership went back up. So pretty much their whole idea is they're buying everything up now while it's cheap, while everything else is failing, so that when COVID is over, they can just have not a monopoly, but they can have a lot of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is
They're going to reap the benefits.
This is a big problem. I was going to ask, also getting back to the collegiate side of things. I mean, Dan, you're doing most of your tournaments, I guess, remotely.
Right now we are, yeah.
Or the students are playing from home.
Yeah, in most cases they are, but some of them are at school doing it, or coming together at a facility that the school put together. But a lot of them are doing it from home. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is like a lot of people have, we've talked about this, Jen and I, about COVID and how it's affected every industry on the planet. And esports has not escaped that damage in every level.
Even though viewership and like acknowledgement went up,
right?
Obviously, you can't go there.
Right. So viewership, right? But then even with the online tournaments, and we're not at that point, Dan, I think, with the colleges, but like as we covered before with ECAC, having the misconduct in the Mountain Dew League, with the Call of Duty situation. I mean, COVID has created a lot of challenges in esports. There's, but it's still aiming to grow. I mean, there's still growth there. I mean, you're going to get everything at a bucket a quarter right now because it's sort of a fire sale. But as we emerge from this, as I've predicted, and I've said this on prior podcasts, is esports in colleges is going to be really big. And let me ask you this. I mean, we're going to get to our next article here, and Jen wants to run a small little video on the Red Bull thing here. And Jen, why don't you just go ahead and share your screen, set up that video.
So pretty much Red Bull Gaming launched their own thing called Simplified Stream for the League of Legends World Championship, and I'm just sharing my screen right now. I thought they did a nice job because we talked about this at the Casino Esports Conference, Ari, and then we talk about it on our podcast sometimes. But that just doesn't happen enough. I think a lot of people are intimidated by esports and don't really know what's going on. But this, for example, was a really nice way. So pretty much before the event and after the event, they did some explanations of how to play the game just for new fans. And
lets them buy items to
this
make
happened
their champion
on
stronger.
Halloween.
More kills means more gold, means more items.
And I just think they did a nice job. So they're explaining it here. And then if you move forward a little bit, so they have nice graphics to show you like the actual map of the game for anybody who might not be familiar with it. And I'm trying to pull up. Yeah, so they even go over play by play what was going on during the match. And I think that for new, not only viewers, but potential bettors in the future, they need to know what's going on if they're going to get into esports at all, because it's a little intimidating, especially something like League of Legends.
Well, I can imagine that. Let me ask.
So I think they did a beautiful job with that, and I think more esports need to start doing that to get new viewers and then new bettors and new players in colleges and everything like that.
Well, I think that on the collegiate level, I'm sure there's a lot of kids, and even on the college levels. I mean, we can't assume that every kid in college. How do you attract, so you have a school, like let's say Rutgers, my alma mater, you have about 30,000 students at that school. Now, not all of those kids are going to be into esports. Now, if you guys got a sponsor for the ECAC,
we have tons.
Yeah, right. Now, wouldn't it be a good idea for them to hire guys who are doing the play-by-play in esports, not only to get the students that are at the school more interested in the esports program, but also to get outside alumni and other people to understand what's going on in with these esport matches as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And so many of the games need it. I mean, some like Rocket League and FIFA and Madden obviously it's not as necessary. But some of the games, absolutely, and especially as colleges try to expand to women. Title IX is a big issue, and apart from Title IX, the colleges want to do everything they do in a gender equitable manner, and there's so many men playing these sports and not as many women as they try to do outreach to women. This sort of thing, that just a how-to or a basic, what is this game and how do you follow it and how do you watch it and what should you be looking for? It absolutely, that has benefits, no question.
Right. So, George, you're in the educating area of esports.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, this is something right in your wheelhouse. You know the games, you understand the games. Who do you educate here? Like Jen said, do you educate the sponsors and then have the sponsors re-educate, or do you have educators that sponsors can hire from your company to go on, do the play-by-plays, or even switch screens so that the person who knows the game very well can explain it to the audience? Why don't you give us an idea of how you and your company would help the audience understand more of these types of games?
So the way in which we mainly work with educational institutions anyway, but in terms of the way that I think is best to do it is, one, that it's a combination of the two, because the more sponsors understand the industry and the games they're getting involved in, the viewership, the audience, demographics, things like that, the more they'll be engaged with the games and the content, and maybe look at further, let's say, sponsorship opportunities with those developers and so on. And then in terms of actually educating the audience, that it's very much, I would say, it's an external. You bring someone external in, so you normally have analysts which are on the panels, that are events. They'll do game by game analysis. Then you'll have actual casters, which will cast the game as it's going on. Every individual really has their own specific, let's say, not area or profession, but within that, let's say, production team and the team within developing the game and analyzing the game, they all have their own role. Right. And I think bringing someone else external into that picture would maybe help with it, especially if, let's say, it's a former professional player, whether it's someone from CSGO, for example, or from League of Legends. If you can set that base knowledge for anyone, it makes the game more enjoyable in terms of you can actually interact with it more and you can understand it more. Right. So, for example, one of my colleagues actually, for the first time, tuned into League of Legends, and was literally in a call with his friend watching it, but he'd never watched it before, and his friend was just there, literally explaining it to him. Right. And that's kind of what needs to happen to, let's say, some people which haven't ever viewed that esport or that specific genre, is someone to kind of, like, let's say, hold their hand for explaining it and understanding it, because then their interaction with that title will automatically increase. Then they can spread it onto other people in terms of letting them know about the game, how enjoyable they had watching it, and it's a feed-on effect, right? Word by mouth in terms of making it grow even more.
Let me ask you something, George. As an issue in regards to esports, let me talk about this. How much do you think esports is a problem that people don't know what's happening? On a scale from 1 to 5, how important is it for people to understand what is happening on the screen for the future of esports? 1 being the least amount, 5 being obviously the most.
I think, in terms of my personal opinion, I would say 3 or 4 in terms of the level, because it helps within getting the word out there, right? And one way in which we say about it here at Esports Academics and people that we've talked to is we know our demographic, and majority of the demographic, I think the statistics are like 79% are under the age of 35. Right. Every other industry, let's say, has had the generational pass down. Esports hasn't. And that's another that's another thing in which I think is going to play a major impact in terms of the growth of the industry.
It's a real barrier. I think it's a real barrier to entry, because the original audience, Dan, is new. It's not like he's saying. It's not like, oh, my dad played football for Seton Hall, or I mean, they don't even have a football team, but my dad played basketball for Seton Hall, and and I'm interested in basketball because my dad played there. There's no pass down at this point of these sports of esports. So how important is it, you think, as I said to George, between 1 and 5, to educate not just the student body, but the not only in your case, but the regulators that you guys have, the teachers, everybody, administrators? How important is it that everybody's educated on what's happening within these games?
Yeah, well, I think it's remarkable, this generation, how much they know. And I think those positions that you're talking about, regulation and all, people will hire from that generation. So our director of esports at the ECAC is and was a gamer and fresh out of school, and she's doing a great job for us. And she speaks the language, and she connects with the competitors as well as the coaches and all of that. And I think a lot of these jobs are going to be filled by people from that generation that really know this stuff well, even though they didn't learn it from their parents, and it's not like the baseball playing catch with your dad sort of thing. It's totally different. But it's still powerful, though.
Oh, it's extremely powerful. But then, that's what I'm saying. It's so important to educate about the games and esports. As I say, I've watched League of Legends matches, and it's enough to make anybody go insane because nobody knows what the hell's going on. Again, when I was a kid and I first sat down, my dad was watching a football game, I didn't know what the hell was going on either.
Right.
It's
a great example.
Yeah. You got guys standing on lines and people running around, and some guy throwing a ball and another guy kicking, and nobody knows what's happening, especially unless you understand it. I mean, think about that for a second. If you think about somebody who comes from a foreign country, they come to the United States and they don't have regular, and I mean, George, football isn't even football in your country. It's what we call soccer. But I mean, in many cases, it's like you got someone from, I don't know, Azerbaijan or some, strange country out there, in a third world country. They come and they watch people playing football. I mean, nowadays things are much more international. Even football games, there's some American football games that are played in the UK and other parts of the world. But, before the internet could make anything popular, which is a great tool, George, to educate people on esports. Yeah, they just didn't know what the hell they were looking at. Had no clue. And I could tell you that I could watch cricket, and I'm telling you, I look at cricket and I'm like, don't know.
You're like, what else going on?
Yeah, what the hell's going on? They're using a flat bat. Some guy's throwing a ball 5 feet from another guy at 90 miles an hour. It's completely
And the match can last 2 days, or
no? There's multiple different games. Like in terms of you can have T20, which is 20 overs. You can have one-day internationals. You can have a 5-day series. There's many different versions of the game.
I mean, you pretty much lost me just by explaining that part.
Yeah,
I don't even know.
There you go.
But it's like, again, it's funny because cricket never picked up in colleges anywhere in the United States, I'm sure. But I've seen rugby clubs in colleges, which is interesting.
Yeah, we've done rugby. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, we're coming up on the half hour here, and I wanted to just touch on this last article. It's kind of a fluff piece, would you say? I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I don't know. Maybe guys, get your opinion on it. So
it's fluffy, but so I'll talk about it a little bit and why I added it. Mm-hmm. So we were talking about LAN centers, and that's why I brought this up, because Five Below is going to have LAN centers, and they partnered with Nerd Street Gamers, I think, for an arena program, I think, with some possible education pieces. And Five Below is trying to go deeper into the gaming space by adding peripherals, which is headsets, microphones, mice, keyboards, branded by Booga, which was the Fortnite World Cup winner.
Yeah, that guy's gotten a lot of traction on that, winning at $3 million.
Because that was the height of Fortnite too, so he was a rock star.
Yeah. But how much can you use a guy like Booga, Dan, to help boost college esports? I mean, Booga's probably he's going to be in college soon, no?
Yeah. Oh, it helps immeasurably. Absolutely. Right. Yeah. Any of these guys with a huge following that get connected with us, it's. I mean, we had a couple of these NFL guys. Shane Vereen, who is also a gamer. He's an NFL running back. He was a caster for HV GamerCon, and we heard a ton of people thrilled about that. So anybody that's got a connection in esports or following is gold for us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And George, how would you learn? How would you educate a school on how they go about getting? Do they recruit Booga as a player? Do you think, or do you think maybe they should use him as more of a spokesperson kind of guy?
I personally think, let's be honest, near enough every single college in North America would want to sign Booga. Let's be honest here. Yeah. So the likelihood is you've got to try and lure him some way, but I would say use him really. The college is a really good way to hone your skills, showcase your skills, and really prove to the world what you can do. And I think that's what needs to really be, and that's why I think what Dan's doing and what other people like CSL and other like organizers are doing is really good in trying to showcase that talent at collegiate, because they are the next generation of professionals. Whether it's coming through collegiate, or whether it's coming through another form, collegiate is going to be one of those pipelines or pathways, whatever you want to call it, for the next generation in terms of making sure we have that, let's say, structure in place for the next generation to progress through the scene. Right. And I think that's something which, in my terms of, if you're going to, the addition of franchise leagues, so I'm going kind of a tiny bit off the top of, let's say, franchise leagues, I feel like are a great thing if done right.
Right.
If they set up a structure where there is ability for, let's say, we all call it grassroots, fantastic, because then you're allowing for the development of players to come through in future years. But if you don't allow for that and you literally just only open a franchise league and don't really have, let's say, try and set up any sort of grassroots for the game for the title, that's where issues can come, in my opinion, because you're not really looking at the longevity of your title. You're only looking at the title for the now rather than always looking towards the future.
But now, Dan, a guy like Booga, he won $3 million at the Fortnite thing. Now, I mean, this is a kid. He was 16 years old. He's probably a senior right now. How do you recruit? I mean, is there going to be college recruitment stuff for these guys? Like a kid but he's already got $3 million. I mean, what does he need a scholarship for?
Well, it depends on what his goals are. He could go anywhere. The schools that get it will be recruiting him. And the interesting thing is, in the NCAA world, there's limits on the value of a scholarship and all of that. And in some of the conferences, they're applying their NCAA rules on eligibility and recruiting inducements and things like that. The ban on that. We don't at the ECAC. We're not imposing any of that. So if a school wants to go and give more than a scholarship, and perhaps that's fine. We're not going to impose these rules until our members tell us that they want to.
So how could you? What do you mean by more of a scholarship? Just more money in the?
They could potentially pay him to come or make a better deal with more than the reason that a scholarship is the value it is because the NCAA applies limits to that. If they didn't have those limits, you might have schools pay a running back a lot more than a scholarship.
So what you're saying is, I mean, this is very different. We're talking about very different. I mean, esports obviously is very competitive. You have that competitive thing. You got a guy like Booga. Now he's at that age where you could recruit him and give him a scholarship and stuff like that. But not only if you got him to come to your college, not only now is he playing on a collegiate esport team but he's also got such a high profile. That's it's like a movie rock star that's attending that college. How much of a benefit does that college get now? And saying, I got one of the, does it attract more money from alumni? I mean, does it attract more attention to the school in general?
And think of all the other kids that want to come to that school just because he's going to it, or find out about that school. They may not have known about it. Now suddenly he's going there. They're like, what is this? I got to go. And so the value to the school is potentially enormous with some of these folks. And I can see all kinds of different deals being structured between a kid like that and a school to induce them to come.
It can just massively help rocket propel any varsity program,
right?
By signing someone like that.
I mean, I was talking about the school as well, but the program, of course.
Oh yeah, the school and the varsity program as a whole. It just automatically rocket propels that.
So here's this is very interesting because you got on colleges. You think colleges are aware of this at this point? I mean, how much do the schools know that if they got a kid like Booga, or if they got some other young, esport professional who even could be a professional but wants to just switch to get a college education, come to a school and has a following? I mean, that's huge.
I think a few schools know it. I don't think all of them do.
Right.
I know. I completely agree with Dan on that. I think the ones that, let's say, that have potentially been doing this for a bit longer than some others will 100% know the benefit of what this could do for, as Dan says, not only the school but the varsity program.
Right. So we have a school, SUNY Canton. They have that school has never gotten more media attention out of anything that has happened at the school in their history than their esports program is generating for them right now. And that is just, and they understand that, and they're doubling down on it. And it's been a great thing for them, and others are kind of looking at that and seeing that. But they're the exception. There's not a ton of examples I can give like that, but that's a school that would absolutely understand the value of someone like that, recruiting someone.
So this is interesting because George and I and Ryan Teo, I run the Casino Esports Conference. Everybody knows that out in our audience. And George and I and Ryan have decided that we're going to start doing some kind of major curriculum, starting on the West Coast, that is going to teach the colleges about this kind of opportunity to put their school on the map. I mean, it literally does. But it's weird for them because you talk about all these administrators, Dan. They're in their 60s, 70s, whatever it is. And they're
too ageist here, but that's
not to be ageist. I never
I'm much older than I am, by the way.
Right. Well, I'm only 18. But other than that, I mean, the point is that, look, if you're looking at the situation, you're thinking about this from a perspective. I don't think that they realize that colleges are obviously a lot. If you think of UCLA, you think of some of the bigger colleges in the United States, they have major football programs, these basketball programs, costing them millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. You get one Booga, right? One Booga on your roster for esports. Think of how many followers does he have, Jen? Like 3 million?
Who knows?
He's got like enormous amounts of followers. Yeah. So we're talking about a guy that has so much influence on younger people from all over the spectrum. And it's not costing the college, all it's costing them is a scholarship. Right. And then it's the impact is so powerful that I don't even know if they even realize how powerful that could be. George, how do you talk to a college like UCLA who understands that one thing, raise shit tons of money for their current conventional school sports? How do we convince them that esports is the way to go, and it's not going to cost them billions and billions and billions of dollars?
I think one of the biggest ways is you need to a certain extent, show them the light, right? Because this is the new generation. This is the way we communicate. This is what we do very much on a daily basis. And I remember someone saying...
but breaking it down, are we talking about the power of the internet? Is that what we're talking about?
I'm partially talking about that, but what I was going to say is I was going to make a reference from CEC. I'm not sure who said it, but someone said it's an evolution in terms of generation and people, right? Let's say 30, 40 years ago, people would have come home from work, turned on a TV and watched TV. Right. Now we come home, we turn on a console, we turn on our PC, and we play a game. That is the new generation, and that's the way it goes.
That was me.
Oh, it was. I wasn't entirely sure. I just remembered it, and it stuck with me the whole time.
So it's a cultural thing.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing, and that's what I completely believe that. And I think when universities start to wake up to that is when, and people obviously need to show the light in terms of what the esports industry is, the people that are coming through the industry, and what it can do as a whole to impact that university, right? Having a prestigious program just will obviously automatically help you grow even further. And whether that's obviously UCLA, it gains them a larger audience. But the thing is as well, yes, fair enough, esports is obviously viewed in North America, but it's a way for them to target internationally as well,
right?
Which is what they already do in those programs for basketball, American football, and all of those other traditional sports that needs to really, I would say, come to fruition in college as well. It's played worldwide, no matter where you're from. Let's be honest. And you've got people that have flown over from Korea to compete in the Overwatch League.
Right.
So it is a worldwide esport. Esports is worldwide. Why not use it now to propel your university to an even more international?
Well, I agree.
Audience.
I mean, 100%. And I can say, Dan, now schools, colleges right now during COVID are suffering. Lots of kids are deferring. Lots of kids are just stopping. They're like, why go to school? I don't want to learn on a computer. It's not going to help me any. I can't socialize. I can't party. I can't go to a fraternity house. I can't do anything fun as a college student. What's the point of being in college? It's stupid. I'm sitting in my parents' house on a computer, and it's boring. I can't go out with friends. I can't do anything. It's like a complete waste of time. Why not just go out and get a job somewhere, earn some money, and then take a deferment and come back later? The colleges are freaking, and they're losing tons of money. Now, what's it going to take for schools to understand that if they adopt an esports program, they can tap into a entire huge marketing network online? I mean, do they even understand that at this point? I mean, you say some do,
yeah,
and then there's others that aren't getting it 100%.
I think a lot of them do, and it's those. So many of the schools that we talk to, the traditional esports. The traditional ECAC schools, the reason they wanted it in the first place was for the enrollment value of it. So they understood, and they saw right away when they had recruiting night, when they invited high school kids to come to campus, and they had all their tables out and of the engineering department, yeah. When they had an esports table, it was packed.
Right.
And a light went off, and they're like, we got to do this. And
right.
But that's just a subset of all the schools. It's a lot of them. It's a lot of the schools that are with us. You know, we got 75 schools, and they all get it.
So let's say they buy in. Let's say colleges buy in. They get it. They understand it's going to be a curriculum. Obviously, one school is going to copy another school. They're going to see that it's happening. How do we find the Boogas in high school? How there's no structure yet in the high schools. So for esports. So how are colleges at this point? I know it's so new, it's so young, it's so how are they recruiting?
So we're trying to help that process along, and we're developing relationships with high school organizations and the organizations that we're partnering with. By the way, Collegiate Sports Marketing Group, CSMG, we partnered with them in January, and they're big believers in developing the high school space, developing the community college space. They've got the NJCAA is connected with them as well, and the recruiting restrictions in the NCAA that prevent schools from doing too much, colleges from doing too much with high schools, don't apply in esports. So colleges can connect with high schools, and conferences can connect with high schools. So we're doing it. And some of the other esports organizations see that potential right there,
right?
But we're providing that link for our ECAC schools with the community colleges and with the high schools.
So doing it until they tell you not to.
Well, there's nobody to tell us not to.
Right.
The NCAA, the NCAA, they appointed somebody to look at esports, and they thought long and hard about it for a year and a half or so.
Yeah.
And they ultimately decided they did not want to venture into this. And so the NCAA is not going to come to us and say we can't. So for us, it's just a matter of our 75 schools. If our 75 schools decide that that's a recruiting advantage, and they don't want one school to get it at to the detriment of another, and we should have some rules restricting this, only then will we do that. But I can't see us doing that because I think they'll all want to take advantage of it.
Here's my advice, and I'm going to tell you this. This goes out to our listeners because there's a lot of business people that listen to this. A lot of these guys listen to to our podcast, and they are investing in companies on the professional level of esports. You're putting your money in the wrong place.
Oh yeah,
Where
100%.
you should be putting your money. Where you should be putting your money is in these college programs. If you're an alumni of any of the schools in the ECAC group, and Dan, you can send me a list of that. I'll post it up somewhere on our page somewhere of all of the schools that are under ECAC. Make a donation to that school. Make a donation to that school. Get more involved in college esports. As I say, as I live and die, Jen, and I've said this multiple times, college esports is going to be the biggest thing in the next year or so. That is going to create the lower levels of high school. It's going to create the professional levels, and we're going to have a complete ecosystem that's going to start in the colleges. And if anyone is, again, if you're an investor in an investment company, take your money, go to your college and tell them they should have an esports program, and tell them you're going to put up all the money for that program, because otherwise you're throwing your money away on the pro levels. Am I right, Dan?
Absolutely. And furthermore, I'd say tell that college that they should join the ECAC.
There you go.
Where they are.
It's about adapting to the times.
Right.
That's what happen now, and I think that's the problem of sometimes institutions. They are very slow to adapt.
Right.
And on a point that Dan was saying, I remember from the CEC panel, which me and Dan appeared on, that had, I believe it was Stephen Light as well. Was it University of North Dakota? I think it might have been. He was from university, and he said one thing in which, when you're trying to convince administrators, is you need to talk their language.
Right.
If you don't talk their language, how are you expecting them to understand what is available and what can potentially be done? And am I able to share screens?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I saw a tweet basically from Hastro, which is the owner of Envious, if no one knows. I need to go back to StreamYard 1 minute.
Yeah, hit share your screen.
Share screen. Application window. Here we go. So you should be able to see this. And basically, this is what Hastro is saying. You guys want to know what has grown shockingly fast for esports in the US? K through 12 and university involvement. Crazy how quickly that sector of the esports industry is growing. Don't sleep on it, and don't be surprised when it explodes. So it's not only something which individuals are already realizing, it's what people in the industry are already realizing. And it's not only Envious which are realizing it, Cloud9 have now realized it as well.
Right.
So let's be honest, it's something which you don't want to sleep on.
Right.
And you want to make sure you adapt now rather than too late. Because if you adapt too late, you're going to miss the bus and miss the boat.
Right. It's true. So here we go. This is our last part of our cast here. I call it Final Thoughts. It's a new thing. I just made it up just now, Jen. So we're gonna keep doing this other thing. My final thoughts are, one, I always wanted to thank our guests, Dan Coonan from the ECAC. Thank you so much for joining us on our show. And George Cook, thank you so much. We'll be looking for wonderful things for you in the future, helping out this development of this very important esports ecosystem. Dan, you're going to go down as one of the most important people in esports development. But I wanted to get final thoughts from Dan, and then we'll go with George. What are your final thoughts on the outlook of college esports? Now, we covered a lot of things, the gambling, the this, the that. Where do you think we'll be in a couple years from now? Final thoughts.
I think it's going to explode. And the fact that, yes, it's being impacted by the pandemic, but it's still thriving even in the midst of the pandemic. And there's not a lot of industries that can say that. In traditional sports, you cannot say that. And so I think the things we hit on today. It's going to be more connected with the high schools. It's going to be more lucrative for schools to get involved in this. And so see, every school in America will not just have a club team. They're going to have varsity teams participating, hopefully in the ECAC. But it's going to be huge. And then when we can get back to when you can have live events, the live events we were having in Albany were spectacular. And they'll only be better the more schools we have. So
very exciting.
I'm excited about it.
Very excited. George, what are we going to do? How are we going to get here? Final thoughts on educating the educators on esports.
So I think very much going down the same route of Dan. It is going to explode in the next few years. And I feel like it's really down to people that want to change the space and actually want to benefit the next generation, and actually are looking into to a certain extent of being visionaries and looking into the future. Right. That is what needs to be done now. The structure needs to be set now rather than in 10, 15 years when it's going to not necessarily be too late, but you would have already had the practice, the time, everything already put in beforehand to really make sure it's done correctly. And then in terms of collegiate esports programs, going back to the NCAA, I'm going to credit them here. They could have got involved, and they could have. They said they didn't want to get involved because they felt it would stagnate collegiate esports. They did the right thing by not getting involved, because now I know this is hard for me to say because I'm in the UK, but look at the US. It is by far one of the best places to be if you want to be involved in collegiate esports. And that's going to be, to a certain extent, my bit of credit to the NCAA. Because if they wanted a piece of the pie, they could have, to a certain extent, ruined it for everyone.
Well, I go back. My final thoughts are: I give credit to the pioneers, Wimstock of World Collegiate Star League, Neil Duffy. These are guys that have been sort of the trailblazers in collegiate esports. It's just going to grow bigger. Jen, your final thoughts?
I think that everybody needs a little bit more education around esports in general. And I think that definitely starts within the colleges and them growing. I think naturally people will just pay more attention.
Yeah, I mean, it's all there. And again, sponsors, investors, college is the way to go. It's going to happen. Again, Dan, thank you so much for joining us. George, thank you again for coming all the way from the UK. I know it's late there. It's time for you to go to sleep.
Yep.
Thank you, Jen, my co-host, and you'll see us in 2 weeks. Our guests in 2 weeks will be Kimberly Culp, the esports attorney, and Ryan Tiao, an esports psychologist. So interesting conversations we'll have there at that time.
Yep.
Good luck.
Awesome.
Stay safe.
Thank you so much, guys.
I'll send you
God
that
bless
list
you.
of colleges.
Thank you. Bye.
Yep. All right.
Bye.